The Data Assessment Special Feature webinar will provide you with the updates to the data assessment feature in CBRNResponder, how to customize your assessment policies, and how to add assessment delegates to utilize that data assessment feature for best practices in an event. So for those of you who may be familiar with our data assessment capability in the past, it has updated quite a bit in the past year, and we're finally rounding out those final changes. So previously, this was a one-step process. You could either approve or reject organization's data, and that was any organization's data. So it was not specific to just the data your organization has. It was any data on the event. You did need to have the data assessor role, so that was carried over. And just a quick look at what this used to look like. You would have the approve or reject button. And then for samples, you could also mark those specifically as accepted, rejected, suspect, or not analyzed. So we wanted to build off that based on the user feedback from you all. So now you can create customized data assessment policies for each data type. You can create multi-assessment step policies, and you can also manage your partnering organization's assessment permissions to assess your data. A few other additional items. You can now receive assessment notifications that will alert you of your assessment status of data points. You can also set up standing assessment policies that will be added by your events to your events by default. You can now only assess your organization's data unless you have been delegated the assessment rights to another organization's data. So to kick things off with the roles, as I mentioned, we did have the data assessor role prior to all of the updates, but we have added an assessment manager. So this is an organization level role made for the person responsible for managing the organization's assessment policies and delegates. This can also be managed by organization administrators and planners, but we do recommend having a specific user for this role. So what can the assessment manager do? They have the ability to add new assessment policies. They can edit and copy existing policies. So I can add, view, and then edit or copy. They can also manage and add assessment delegates at the event level. Switching to the event space, the data assessor role that I mentioned, this role should be assigned to the QA or QC or the assessment teams. So anyone that is going to be responsible for assessing your data, reviewing it, they should have this role. With this role, they are able to assess data that is owned by their organization and data owned by other organizations if your organization has been added as a delegate. They can also create new policies at the event level. So they cannot do the policies at the organization level how the how the assessment manager can, but they can at the event level. So taking a look at the default assessment policy, if you were someone who wasn't consistently assessing their data in CBRNResponder, this default policy may be the solution here. So all organizations, we updated it to the new default assessment policy. The exact name is default system assessment policy. So this just has a single step named assessment review, and this is replacing the approve and reject buttons from the previous assessment. So the new statuses are pending review, under review, past review, and failed review. So you can add a comment with all of these. I will note that if you are failing an assessment review, you are required to enter a comment along with it. So if your organization is used to using the one-step policy in CBRNResponder, then no other changes there are needed. You do not have to utilize the multi-layer assessment policy, but this is the new update just for the one step. So by default, everyone starts out with this assessment policy. On the other hand, if you are looking to customize your assessment policies, you can do this with multiple different layers of assessment. Again, the assessment manager has full capability to do this along with the administrator and planner. So to create or edit an assessment policy, they will open up the assessment policies page in the organization space. On this page, you will select Add Policy. Just a note, if you do not have any assessment policies created yet, the table below will be empty, but once you do create policies, they will populate there. So in the general information section, you are going to first name the policy. You can provide any additional comments about this assessment policy. You can choose the specific data type that this applies to. So here, if you assess your surveys different than you assess your radiological spectra, you can customize a policy for each one of those data types. You can also just not enter a data point there, and this means it will apply to all data types for ones that do not already have an explicit policy. The next field is default. So if you select this, this will be the default assessment policy for your organization. So you can have only one default policy for each data type. So you can have a default for surveys and a default for radiological spectra, but you may not have two default policies for one data type. And the final field in the general information section is the data is private until full participant review step. So this is where you can control how your data is viewed to other organizations. If you choose to enable this checkbox, your data is private to those outside your organization until you get the full participant review step passed. When this step does pass review, then your partnering organizations will have the ability to see this data point. And we do have a tooltip there reminding you of that. So if you're ever a little unsure about the wording there, you can always open the tooltip and this will remind you of the feature. So taking a look at the actual policy steps, you can use the Add Step button on the right side of the header, and you can add up to 10 steps for the policy. So you can keep it at just one and customize it, or add up to 10, whichever your organization has in place. So you can add the custom steps and indicate which step marks the data point as approved. So when assessing data, assessors are not required to assess the data records in order. So if you have a 3-step policy, you do not have to assess those in order. It could be 3 different individuals that are responsible for assessing. So the order is not strict. If you did check off the visible to full participants on past review checkbox in the general information section, you will also have to select which step in your policy steps is going to make the data visible to the full participants. So if this means that the partnering organizations will not see critical information about the data point until it has passed that step. What is the critical information? So this is going to vary slightly for each data point. Severity, the value, count, measurement, so things involving the actual amount of that data point, attachments, comments, and for the chemical data types. Here you can see that I have the two records highlighted in pink. They are a pale yellow color, and they do have that warning icon. So these records are obfuscated to the user that is viewing this page right now. And it's because the data points have not passed review, and so the full participant cannot view it yet. If you are viewing data and you do see this icon and the pale yellow record, you can hover over it and it will give you a description of why you are not able to see the full details of the record. Once you have customized the policy, you will click Save. And this is what your policy will look like with once it is created. So to recap here, looking at these steps, when the field team review, which I have as the listed first, once that step passes review, it will be released to full participant event partners. So if I'm on the field team and I assess the data point, then it will no longer be obfuscated, so it will not have that pale yellow color and the warning icon there. All participants will now be able to see it on the event. When the EOC review step passes review, this data point will be considered approved. So that means on the map, it will have a green approved ring around it, and it will also consider the status approved when you're looking at it in the tabular view. So full participants can view it after step one's been completed, but the data point is not considered fully approved until the EOC review step has been approved. Once you have your assessment policies in place, there are a few caveats. So you are not able to edit specific fields of an assessment policy if there has already been data that has been assessed using this policy. So here, if I hover over the private until full participant review step, I get this message that says data points have been assessed using the policy, so it cannot be modified. Similarly, you cannot delete an assessment policy if it is the default policy for the organization. So if I wanted to use a different policy, you would create a new one, and then you could either delete this existing one or change the default to no. We've also added the ability to add assessment delegates. So previously you were able to assess any of the data on your event. Now you are only able to assess your organization's data unless other organizations have delegated assessment rights to your organization. So to manage the assessment delegates, in the event space, you are going to open up the Assessment Delegates tab. And here you will see all the partners on your event along with information about the specific organization. So taking a look here, I can see Chainbridge Technologies, their participant type, they're the event sponsor. So this is an event that is owned by Chainbridge Technologies, and the other two organizations are considered full participants, so they're partners on this event. But if you would like to manage who can assess your data, so let's say we want to delegate the MRC Group A organization, let's say their role in this event is to just assess data, we need to make sure they have the ability to do so. So we are going to make them an assessment delegate. When delegating assessment rights to another organization, you will first need to choose which assessment policy their data will follow. So here highlighted in pink, this is the policy organization. This field determines which organization's assessment policy you would like to use for data owned by your organization. So in terms of the context of the images here, this means that data owned by the Public Health Department organization will use the Public Health Department's assessment policy when assessing the data. You could also use the drop down to change it to use, for example, Chainbridge Technologies policy, but for this case, we want to keep the assessment policy as the Public Health Department's. The delegation organizations, this is where you can choose other organizations and give them permission to assess data points that are owned by your organization. So you can only add delegates that are currently partners on the event. So this is not where you will be adding new partners to the event. It's just existing partners that you can select to be delegates. So in this case, the Chainbridge Technologies organization and Main Street Fire Department organizations have the ability to assess data points that are owned by the Public Health Department. And so to tie that all together, once I have saved these changes, the owning organization and the delegates can now assess the organization's data. So here, the Public Health Department's organization's data can be assessed by data assessors in the Main Street Fire Department and Chainbridge Technology organization. So even though we do have those new assessment delegate features, the data viewer approved data only role does still exist. So users with this role will now only be able to view data that has passed review at the approve step. So that is the pink column, visible to approved data only partners. And then the visible to full participants will show yes or no. The full participant organizations can view the data. There is a different case here if maybe you're not added as a partnering organization, but if you're added individually to an event, data collected by that user is considered to be owned by the sponsoring organization. So those individual responders will be able to assess other data points owned by the sponsoring organization. So taking a look here, the user FireSim is not a member of the Chainbridge organization. However, they are a member of the Simulated Fire Department organization. So that's why it's listed as the collecting organization. However, because they were added individually to the event instead of with their organization as a partner, their data collected will be owned by Chainbridge. So if you're added just explicitly as an individual to an event, so they pull you in for something, you will then be associated with the owning organization whenever you are collecting data. Now, once you have all of those in place, comes assessing data. So there are a few different ways that you can assess data. Again, you do need that data assessor role. You can bulk assess data by viewing the list page of various data types. So here on the surveys page, let's say I reviewed a bunch of surveys, I was on scene when they were taken. I can go into assessment mode, and this will allow me to filter down to the specific data points that I want to assess. So the first filter is going to filter the data by the owning organization. MRC Group A would be the owning organization of the data I want to assess. You will then select the assessment policy step that you want to assess. So for example, if I'm on the field team and I want to assess the field team step, I would select that from here. In this case, it's assessment review. And then you will select the current status of the data points. So not the status that you want it to update to, it's what it's currently listed as. So if you were in the process of assessing 10 data points and you listed them all as under review, that's what you would select here. And then you would set the new status here to the following list. You can also assess data points individually by opening up the record through the magnifying glass. And you can scroll down to the assessment details section, and then you can assess the appropriate step. You will also be able to see the assessment history of that data point, so you can see who else performed steps, what the current and previous state was. If you are not a data assessor, so you are not able to actually assess any of the steps, you will still be able to see this section, but you will not be able to configure any of the drop downs. Assess the data while you're viewing it geospatially on the event map by opening up the additional details. So here, this survey I would like to assess. I can click the additional details and it will open up this menu on the right hand side of the map. I can see further information about the survey, and then I want to view the assessment. And here I will see the assessment steps as well as the assessment history. So I can just open up the step from here and select the appropriate review step. As you are assessing data points from either the map or the tabular view, they will cause the data point to reload. So here I can see on the map, if I assess some of these data points, there will be that ring around them that shows the different assessment status. And I do want to note that if a data point is edited after it has been assessed, the assessment status will revert back to pending, and that data point will need to be reassessed. Something else that was added was the ability to receive assessment notifications. So these notifications can be sent to the specific user or field team that collected the data point, and they will be sent if it is marked as failed review. You can customize the frequency of the notifications and the manner they are sent to you. Event managers do have the ability to turn off these notifications, and the data assessors, they will receive a notification when there is pending data that needs to be assessed. To customize the assessment notifications, you will open the notifications option from your profile dropdown, and here you can select the notification frequency for failed review and pending review. So the period is completely customizable to you, depending on how often you would like to see those notifications. You can also configure the device that you would like these notifications to be sent to. So you can send them to your email, push notifications through the CBRNResponder mobile application, or a text message, and you can also unsubscribe from these notifications if you would like. An example of what a assessment email would look like. So on the left, it will be subject data points failed review. It will give you the list or single item of the data that was failed review. You can click the direct link and it will take you to that data point, and you'll be able to view the comment of maybe why it was failed review or if there's anything needed on your end. The pending review email, you can see here there's a list of about nine different data points that are pending review. So if I am the data assessor and I get this email, I can click the links of one of these records and I can go ahead and approve or reject accordingly. Now I'm going to show how you can put that all together and make this a best practice when you're actually assessing data and in a real situation. As I touched on, assessment of data can be done in bulk while you're individually viewing the record and from the event map. As of right now, you are not able to assign data points to specific individuals to assess, but we do have some best practices that you can adopt to achieve your goals. So event managers can choose to create and share user drawings to identify the area in which a particular data assessor should be reviewing data. So again, if you're as a data assessor at EOC, you're viewing the data coming in live on the map, and there is a user drawing that designates, in this case, Christine. So Christine assessment, she is responsible now for assessing the data in this area. So from the event manager perspective, you would draw a polygon over the area for the data assessor, and you will name the shape as their name or something that is recognizable to them. And then the data assessor can click on the individual data points and mark them as under review, meaning they have received this. They are going to start reviewing these data points. This will show up on the data table. So that list page here in this record, I can see Christine had left a comment that she is going to assess this. So she's acknowledging that she has received this notification. You can also click on the polygon to view the number of readings in that specific shape, and you can export the data. So you can also view the details specifically from the map, and you will have that location context of where the data point is. So taking a look at a specific data assessor use case, here you can see that there are 5 different assessment sections that have been named. So I will show a quick walkthrough of how quick and simple this can be from the event map. So in the HANA assessment shape, I see there are 28 surveys. I click, I can view it from the side menu. I can view all of the fields that I would see when viewing it from the table. Let's say I was there, I saw it get taken. I can leave a comment that says, I'm passing review. And then now I can see that the step was updated. There is a check, and in just a few seconds, once the map reloads, I can see that that data point now has the green approved ring around it.